In the shadow of the ancient Shaolin Temple, there was a man whose name was never spoken, only whispered. His hands, calloused and scarred, had once saved lives, but now they took them with precision so exact that even the condemned never saw the strike coming. He was the Shaolin executioner, a monk trained not just in the art of enlightenment, but in the deadly mastery of Shaolin Kung Fu. Born as Li Cheng, his journey into darkness began like that of many monks, humble, devoted to spiritual growth. His skill with the staff and blade outpaced his peers, but it was his unparalleled control of qi that set him apart. The elder monks marveled at how Li could strike with blinding speed, harnessing his inner energy to deliver blows that could both heal and destroy. Yet, beneath his calm exterior, a storm brewed, a storm of doubt, frustration, and anger, emotions a monk was supposed to transcend. The first time he was summoned to perform an execution was for a thief who had stolen relics from the temple. Li had never killed a man before. His hands shook as he approached the kneeling criminal, the staff in his hands feeling heavier than it ever had during training. But with a single swift motion, the man was dead, his life snuffed out like a candle in the wind. Li stared at the body, his heart pounding. He had always believed in the purity of the Shaolin way, in the sanctity of life. But that day something changed. As time passed, more executions followed. The temple's role as a guardian of justice in the region meant Li was often called upon to deal with criminals, rebels, and those deemed a threat to the temple's peace. With each death, he honed his skills, his strikes becoming faster, more precise. He convinced himself it was a duty, a burden the temple placed upon him because of his abilities. But deep inside, he began to feel something different, something darker. He no longer shook before a kill. In fact, he began to enjoy the control, the absolute power of life and death. Word of the Shaolin executioner spread beyond the temple walls, and soon, his services were sought by regional warlords and powerful nobles. They brought their enemies, rivals, and traitors to the temple, paying handsomely for a quick and silent end. The elders, uncomfortable with the growing reputation of their warrior monk, attempted to rein him in, but by then it was too late. Li had found a calling that no longer aligned with the temple's teachings. One night, as he meditated alone in his chamber, Li received a visitor, a shadowy figure draped in black. The figure spoke of a powerful warlord who had risen in the north, someone who posed a grave threat not only to the temple, but to all of China. This warlord, it was said, was invincible, having slaughtered entire armies without so much as a scratch. His only weakness, the visitor whispered, was that he feared no man except one, the Shaolin executioner. Intrigued and flattered, Li accepted the challenge. He set out the next morning, traveling for days across barren lands and war-torn villages, each step bringing him closer to the heart of darkness. When he finally reached the warlord's fortress, it was as though he had stepped into a nightmare. Bodies hung from the walls, their faces frozen in terror. Li steeled himself, knowing this was the moment he had been waiting for, a final test of his skill and power. The warlord awaited him in a grand hall, surrounded by heavily armed guards. But Li didn't hesitate. He moved like a shadow, his strikes silent and deadly, taking out the guards with effortless grace. Soon, only the warlord remained, seated on his throne, watching with amusement. "So, the Shaolin executioner has come for me," the warlord sneered, rising to his feet. Without a word, Li attacked, his fists a blur of motion, his qi channeled into every blow. But the warlord was unlike any opponent he had ever faced. He matched Li's speed, blocking his strikes with ease.